Hi, Ray Lee with Speedboat Magazine. We are here with another episode of Boats and Boat Bros podcast with your host, Myrick Coil. And today we have the legendary offshore racer from yesteryear and back in the wild days of offshore racing, Mr. Bob Kaiser. Bob, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Ray. Thanks, guys, for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
Oh, it's a real honor. As a matter of fact, we were just talking before we got you on about how many admirers you have. Just talking about having you on. Myrick,
Yeah.
who are you talking to?
Yeah, so today, Don Unken, which is the owner of the American Ethanol boat, who set the Top Gun at Lake of the Ozarks, he goes, man, I really look up to him and admire everything that he did back in the day. And he mentioned Earl Lanier, and he also, and then August Bush hit me up today about getting his boats ready for the season. I told him I was doing that, and he's like, oh, tell him I said hi, because he goes, I really enjoyed hanging out with him back in the day. So
yeah, I
got
cool some story. Great times with August, that's for sure, man.
Yeah.
August mentioned that he has some stories that that may be a little too salty to air over here.
I was just thinking the same thing when you brought him up. I didn't have him on my list to talk about, but no, we had a lot of fun together.
All right, so we'll have to catch up on those stories after we go off air. All right, so let's just get down to it, Bob. How did you get into the passion? Because there's nobody more passionate that I've met than you in high performance boating. And so how did you come to get into this wild world?
Yeah, man, I was thinking about that today, trying to figure out the answer to one of that question. And so I guess, I always had fast boats when I was a kid. My mom, my dad lived on Lake St. Clair and outside Detroit. And, I had a Donzi, a 18-foot 2+3 Donzi when I was probably 15, 16. Then I graduated up, and then I used to race like all these guys like Little Smidgen and Little Rhino and the guys on Lake St. Clair, the Michigan races, the racers. They were 28 Magnums, and they'd always beat me, and I'd bug them as a kid and try to get up to. They were going 75, and I was going 62, and I was always wanted to be the fastest on the lake, and I do crazy things with my friends, just looking for bigger boats to jump the wakes, and I don't know, I always wanted rough water just to scare my friends, and probably not the smartest guy around doing that. And then, I went off to school, came back, worked, got enough money, bought a 28-foot cigarette, went down to a boat race in Detroit. I remember Betty Cook in the Kama boat or the Michelob Light boat at the time. She was with John Connor, I believe, as a throttle man. It was 78. Oh, gosh, was it? No, probably 81. And watched him race and said, I want to do this. This is really cool. This is what I want to do. So I think I can do this. I didn't know how I was going to do it because I didn't have enough money. So then I started, my friend Chip Secor got on board this boat called Tosti Asti, which was like a stretch cigarette. I think it was like a 48-foot V-bottom cigarette at the time. Tosti Asti, yeah. And I was washing the boat. So I just went to New Orleans. I remember I went to a few races, and I was just the guy dragging the boat around, washing the boat. And then in 84, then I got into a divisional race on a little Pantera with a friend of mine. I was the throttle man. And then Red Crane asked me if I wanted to go racing on this boat called the Chrysler Laser. So 3 or 4 of us, we all put our money in. All of a sudden, we were in a Class 1 boat. We didn't do very well, but we had a good time. And it's a good time now. I don't think it was that good a time. But we went to all the races, crashed, almost died before anybody knew my name. And over in, the heck was I, in Northport, where we race up there in the Boyne Thunder now, off the Leelanau Peninsula. I remember, and John Connor dragged me out of the water, Tom Gentry, and we flipped the boat. And back then, it was a bad deal, right? It was the first race my parents ever went to. I said, I didn't tell them I was racing. And then they were watching me, and I flipped the boat right in front of them. And that wasn't that common to flip boats, in that earlier day, because we were just reaching speeds. And obviously, it was driver error or throttle man error, but I'll take the credit. And it went over. And then they airlifted me out of the helicopter, and I thought I was done, but I wasn't. And then about 2 weeks later, we raced from Miami to Bimini and back. So,
wow,
yeah, that what was that like? Was the weather good when you did it, or was it
terrible? We broke about, I think we broke 5 miles. I was racing these Hemi motors, right? Keith Black Hemi motors out of Detroit, So they were very great motors, but not great for an offshore race boat. And so we going to Miami to Bimini. I mean, one of the greatest films ever is seeing Ben Kramer in that boat. I think it was 86, 87 when he was in that 42 Apache, him and Bobby Cesente. Yeah. And that great flick they have of him racing, it was beautiful. But we were definitely way behind him. And I think we broke 5 miles away from Bimini, and we had to idle all the way back 60 miles.
Oh, my God.
That a long idle back, bro.
Yeah.
I remember they custom. I think we went back the next day because we had like 10 hours to get the boat back, and we were boarded by customs. I'm like, are you kidding me? What else could go wrong here?
Yeah.
So a lot of good
stuck out like a sore thumb to him, I guess.
Coming in one motor barely, and then we did that from 84, 85, and then in 86 we started our own team, and I met Earl Lanier. I did not meet Earl Lanier. 85, Stephen won the world championship, Stephen Curtis, with Tony Roberts of the boat, Mr. Roberts, a 38-foot active cat, I believe. And so it was Stephen's first, that was a world famous picture of Stephen holding the British flag in front of him when he was like 19 years old. So
it's wild.
Very cool. And I met him, and I'm like, I got to do something different than what I'm doing here. So I hooked up with, I bought this boat called the Sprinter boat, which was Dick Fulham and Mike Poppet died in that weekend race, and the guy didn't want to race anymore. So I bought his boat and hired Earl Lanier.
Wow. I've heard a lot of good things about Mr. Lanier. I even follow the fact that I think he makes like a small outboard boat now in Georgia. Is that right? Something like that?
I think he's making them in Sebring now.
Sebring. But yeah, they're like some crazy numbers out of a small outboard catamaran or something like
Near
that.
custom boats.
Yeah.
Custom fishing boat that goes like 110 miles an hour.
Yeah. I follow him on Instagram, and I always enjoy watching the speeds climb on those things, but that's neat stuff.
Yeah. He's quite a character, man. I remember getting introduced to Earl Lanier. So end of 85 season. I remember I didn't know him very well, not at all. I just introduced by Tony Roberts. He says, this guy you want to hire. So I hired him as a throttle man, and we started our systems team. And neither of us knew each other, right? So and then I was going on a trip to Hawaii, and I went down to Florida and got a little carried away a few nights and ran out of money before I went to Hawaii. So I had to go to see Errol. And I'm like, hey, Errol. Hey, Bob, how are you? Nice to see you again. Yeah, thanks. Can I borrow 10 grand? He's like, what?
I'm going on vacation.
I'm out of money, I said, well, you sure you're all right with that? He says, hey, I got your boat. And he turned around, and my boat was in complete pieces already. So I was like, all right.
Collateral.
That's awesome. So did you guys get along right away? Gel working with each other? Racing?
I mean, if Errol, you really didn't have a chance. I mean, he knows. I mean, the throttle man and driver, he's kind of like the driver in those days. I was not used to going that fast all the time. And so as a driver, you're just basically hanging on.
Yeah, hang on for dear life.
I'm just trying to give him the straightest line and staying away from the other boats. And in those days, it was a little, probably not as skilled as a driver as they are now. We were wide open courses, and you try to stay clear, and you can make some time up on some turns, but not like it is now. And so, yeah, man, just we got along really well. Sometimes we had the headphones, and inevitably I'd be talking, he'd pull the cord out of his and wave at me. And I just held on like hell,
Yeah.
He was a pretty aggressive driver. Definitely a very aggressive throttle man.
So and what kind of power did you have in the boats back then? I mean,
yeah, we had the so in the beginning when we won in 86, 87, we were running the Mercury package. So they were the 750 EFIs, which probably put out 725, but 500 big blocks, right?
Yeah, same ones Johnny said he raced. I think
And they had the Merc Cruiser 4s, and they had the 4 drives, and then they didn't have the 5 drives yet. So the 4, we were always busting drives. That was our nemesis. And then
your race team was Systems, and you were in a Cougar Cat.
Yep, in a Cougar Cat from day one. Yep.
What size?
38. It was a 38-foot Cougar, and The new boat after that was a 40, but the 38-foot was the boat with the championships.
How many seasons did you race that boat?
86, 87, 88. And then we started building the boat in the new boat and kind of went to the 89 Worlds in Atlantic City.
Wow. So tell us about the championships that you won in the 38.
So we won a lot of races, right? We won the first race I won in the 38 was the Walsh Grand Prix, which was previously the Benihana in New Jersey, which was really cool because everybody that raced knew the Benihana, right? And so it was a cool race to win. There's a great video. We were flying high. It was unusually calm at the time for New Jersey, so the boat was trimmed pretty high, and we lost it this one time, and we almost lost it. So it was a very fun race. It was really cool to finally bring it home. I've been racing a while, and so to come from washing a boat in '83 for an Aussie team, and then winning my first national race 3 years later, I was like pinching myself,
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that was a good feeling. And then we went on to we were the points leader in '86 all the way through from that race on, going into the last race in '86. Yeah, I was I had a cast of characters I was racing with. Ray, I had Sal and Willie and the Seahawk Boys. I had Justo J. We had Gus Falcone. You had Ralph Lanero. You have Benny Lorenzo. We had George Morales. We had Ben Kramer. We had Bobby Cesente. We had Al Copeland. We had Billy Soroy. We had Tom Gentry. We had,
just
J.D.
icons.
D'Elia. We got J.D. D'Elia, his father, John D'Elia. We had Spirit of America with Antonelli and Hurley Stepp. Had Dirty Laundry with Joe Mock and Harold Smitty Smith. I mean, we had some pretty big names out there. We had Lauren Leibel, of course, and Stephen Curtis, and I could go on and on. I'm sure there's going to be somebody I forgot, but John.
You did pretty good there off the cuff, man. I don't think I could name that many guys I race against right now. You did good.
They were pretty. I mean, we have colorful characters, man. Those driver meetings were something else, and some of the guys that walk in, it was a real spectacle. It was a real show.
To me, like a colorful character in today's racing is like Billy Moff. So you had a bunch of guys like Billy Moff that you raced against.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We had a lot of people watching us for a lot of different reasons. So,
well, I mean, you've named all the heroes in old school offshore powerboat racing, and so that's amazing because I'm sure everybody that's watching has their favorite. But God, I can't even imagine what the pits were like or the parties. Can you recall some of those?
Oh yeah. It was hard not to. We get to there. We had a lot of fun. We get to the gym race sites about Wednesday, Thursday, and the race was Saturday or Sunday, and try to behave ourselves 24 hours before the race, and then let it go afterwards. But we raced every 2 weeks, April through November in those days, and the races were 160, 150, 170 miles long. So it did take a toll. All kidding aside, I mean there were some crazy races, man, like Sodas Point, New York. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, when Ben stuffed it in his I think a Maelstrom cat, and he went down, and Bobby Cesente got hurt really bad, terrible accident. Thank God they both lived. And then I think we were black flagged. I think it took second, or I won that race. It was called, but I mean the seas were 8 to 10 foot seas. I was beating Molson Indy, which was crazy because I was winning the race, and Molson Indy was a cat, obviously, and a V-bottom, and we were going for it. But Arrow, one time we stuffed it so hard, I looked over and we didn't have canopies. We didn't have canopies, and I looked over and Errol's helmet was off his head, and all I could see was just blood just gushing out of his mouth and bit off the tip of his tongue,
Oh, jeez.
Go. And then somehow he pulled another helmet underneath. I said, so why would you have two helmets? He said, finish the race with two helmets. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So
yeah, I'm not questioning you now. You're a wild man.
You're a wild guy.
Yeah.
So Sodas Point was a real memorable race. And then, I know we got a lot of funny stories,
That's awesome.
I mean,
We won a lot of races. I mean, the great thing we ran 3 races in a row. We won in 87, the beginning of 87, we won 3 in a row, which was pretty difficult to do. So that was a great start to 87. 86, the last race. Oh, I'm sorry. 86, the last race of the year was Miami. That was a disappointing race. Bennett stuffed in Sodas Point. He borrowed Seahawk boat Sal's, got in the boat, became the driver of record, and then I broke with about 5 miles to go in Miami with about a 7-mile lead and lost the national championship. So that was a bummer.
Oh,
heartbreaker.
Wow. I heard Johnny's podcast earlier with you guys, and you kind of remember the great times, but unfortunately you remember the ones that got away,
Yeah.
Like
for sure.
at the very end when you bust after a long, hard day of racing. You race 160 miles and you bust at 152 miles.
Bob Teague had a story about that in the Parker Enduro, that same one. I was leading and then it was over.
That's it. And not much you can do about it.
No.
Yeah.
So, we had that again, and then 87, 80, and then 88, I had that again, the national championship, the last race in Atlantic City. I'm looking at the picture of the boat right now. I'm not going to say the guy's name, but I'm not very happy with that guy to that day, man. I was lapping the guy. It was a super boat, slow boat. And he cut in front of me, and I basically almost had to spin out to avoid him. And I broke a drive and lost the national championship 2 miles away. So I would have had 86, 87, 88 in my mind.
Wow.
But I didn't.
Yeah.
Were there words exchanged after that race in the pits?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really mad.
Like, what were you doing, dumbass?
Because Bob, you're a big guy, and I imagine pretty threatening.
I was pretty mad.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. I mean, you work so hard and get down to it,
Especially national championship. It's the hardest thing, the national championship.
That's it, man. That US-1 is hard to find. It's hard to
for sure.
That's a long series.
Yeah, that seems to be the common thread between a lot of the racers that have earned the US-1 championship title, and it's that important. And Bob, your boat still wears that proudly on the 48.
Yeah,
well,
that's cool.
I probably shouldn't.
No, it's cool.
No, of course,
if you've had it before, I think Stuart Haim does it too, and I always think that's pretty badass because people ask what it's about, and then you tell them, and they're like, "Oh, I think that's freaking awesome!" Like Pro Floors did it with NZ1 for New Zealand national champion. I was like, I think that's cool when all the countries come together and battle at the Worlds with their number ones on there. So I think for sure.
I mean, the title world champion sounds grander, but you guys explained that it's more of a battle to win the US-1 national because there's so much into it, right?
Yeah, that's
Bob?
for sure, man. Well, it used to be a 10 race circuit, so 10 races.
We're 8 now, but still, it's
a grind.
Yeah.
A grind.
So you guys have a lot in common. You in both of you guys are offshore championship world racer, drivers.
Yeah.
What do you see, Bob, from the time that you were racing to today?
Well, I mean, it was, when we were racing, just like they are now, is that it was a whole different deal. We were, we went offshore. It was not a very good spectator sport by any means. We always tried to bring it to the living room with the helicopters, but then to get good television time was difficult. And then they tried to bring it closer to shore, and then they tried to, make larger laps. But now they basically are doing roundy rounds or shorter laps, which is a great idea. But so it's a different skill set. I think it's probably more difficult to drive a boat now and race hard in Class 1 than it was as a driver, as it was. But so I think there's a lot more.
But I bet you had a lot more conditions to deal with. Yeah. I guarantee it. With
they raced a little bit flatter water than we did.
Yeah, I'd say for sure.
Stupid water. They shouldn't have never let some of the races go that we went off in. They should have never.
8 to 10 footers. That's insane.
I mean, if you look at but there's a video on Sodas Point, I believe, if you Google it and on YouTube, and it's really crazy water. I mean, it's like, well, how they would ever let that race start? I have no idea. They would never do it now. I know that. I mean, everybody sunk. It was crazy.
Yeah. I remember going to, in the early 2000s, they raced us in Cape Cod one time, and everybody broke, whether they hydraulicked an engine or whether it was just, we were done. I mean, it was just because they were trying to get the race in. It was an SBI event, and yeah, I was like, why did that happen? Because everybody's in the pits, like, got drugged back in, and then trying to get their engines unhydraulic and all this stuff. It was silly.
Yeah, I mean, so they're going a lot fast. Well, I think now, how fast are you going now in Class 1? They got you restricted now.
Well, it's about mid 150s
Yeah, so
in
they're going a
Class
lot
1.
fast.
But
Like we saw a line too, we were going 130, 140, but we are probably going 125, 130, you know?
yeah, and in Supercat race trim, I usually think of it about 20-mile-an-hour differences, because I race super stock, the outboard cat, the 300 outboard cat, and say that I can run 110 in that. I think I can run 130 in Supercat. And if Class 1, I'll look at their speeds or whatever, and I think that it's about 20-mile-an-hour gap between each individual class.
Yeah.
So whenever we're out in the super stock, and I my throttleman for the Supercat will call, and he'll say, "What prop do you need?" And I'll tell him my top speed I saw in the first couple of laps, and then you can usually get pretty close off a 20-mile-an-hour difference.
Yeah. Well, Bob, you were nice enough to have us out to your place out in Michigan, and had a great time with you. We shot several of your boats. We had the Sism family out there with us, and Steve Curtis, and you shared some amazing stories with us. One of them, there's an iconic picture of the Systems race boat clear up onto the beach.
Oh yeah, I read about that last night. They and somebody even made, it was an offshore only post, and somebody even was and said like EPA was all over him and he got fined all this money. Was that true?
No, I mean they tried to, like the because of the mangroves, right? Yeah. So what happened is we were winning the race, and made the turn. We used to go out to West Sand Key, which is a long way, so the water's real flat, and then it gets really rough. It starts rolling because you get into the deep water and take a left. So we were going down on, I don't know, second or third lap, and we were in a totally enclosed canopy at the time, right? And we hit a wave. And I felt all this water underneath my chin. I'm like, oh, that's bad. What's going on? And I felt it again, because we were hauling ass. And I looked over it, and I'm looked down. I'm like, oh God, because then I got about that much water at my feet, So I'm like, Earl, we're sinking. He goes, no, we ain't sinking. Keep going. I'm like, Abe, I'm sinking. So I knew I blew my bottom out because he didn't, it's a cat, so he didn't feel it. And so he said, okay, let's go to the beach. So I think we were probably 3 miles out in those days, maybe I call it 3 miles out. So I took a left, but all the spectator fleets were, lined up along the Navy pier there along the shore before you go back into the harbor. And so I'm hauling ass trying to get across, cutting the course, cutting people off. And then all of a sudden the boat starts filling up with water on my side, right? So the boat starts cantilevering like this. And I'm like, and then we had these crazy automatic canopies at the time. So we're pushing this button to get these things open. And then I'm unstrapping to get out of the thing. At the same time, then I'm going towards all these spectator boats, and they're all like,
get out of the way.
As you know, it's tough to drive it when it's full of water.
Yeah.
And then so there's one cyclone fence separating,
I saw that.
separating the Navy pier and the public beach. One fence that's this big on about a 5-mile stretch. I'm like, oh God, that fence, So I'm like, oh, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to hit to the left. I'm going to go on the left of the thing. As soon as Errol chopped the throttles at about,
it dove right.
It hooked right on the boat, and I just hit that fence perfectly. I just pickle forked that thing and went up like that. Couldn't have tried to hit that from a mile away. I went up on that and had that big footing that was holding the fence, took out the whole bottom of the rest of the boat, and it was just sitting there. And I'm just like, God.
I know. I the picture I saw, there's like spectators looking in the engine compartment, all this stuff.
I was like, what's next, man? And then this guy comes up with the park ranger hat on, man. Like the park ranger guy?
Yeah.
And he says, you guys all right? We're like, yeah. He's like, I'll waive that $2 fee today.
Thanks, buddy.
And that was at the end of the story. Then we're trying. Now we try to go get a lift and a crane or a tow truck or whatever. We're going to try to pick the boat up off the beach and get it over. They won't let me do that because the mangroves and all the people were saying you're destroying the property. And so we had to wait till now it's starting to blow. Then it goes to high tide. Then we're out there about 11 o'clock at night at high tide, trying to push the boat and get a bunch of guys to push it off. Then we got to put a sump pump on the boat to keep it from sinking. Then we got to
salvage everything.
Then you got to salvage it over the crane. That was the first race. I'm like, I don't know if this is all worth it, man. I raced in Key West probably. I did race in Key West 14 years, so probably 14 times 3, I think. Was at 35, 40 races, in Key. We used to race 3 races, and so a weekend, and then we had one national race there. So probably 35 times I raced there, and we had some great races. And unfortunately, lost a lot of good friends there too. We lost 4 of my buddies there, and I was at every one of those races when Tom
That's terrible.
killed and Mark got killed, Mark Lavin and Jesse James. When I won the world championship in '86, it was really bittersweet because my buddy got killed. We were pretty good buddies, and
I was watching that episode with the Earnhardt when Dale Earnhardt died and Waltrip won at that time. I was like, how bad of a deal that had to be. So similar to what you had. So one of your friends died and you win the world championship. That's
bad deal. Go to win the world championships and be so happy and live that dream, and then especially after 2 weeks before that, I lost the national championship in that screwed up way. And then, but nothing was worse than, obviously the win was superseded by my friend's death. And then, winning it and trying to be happy, but, just seeing all the sadness. It was, but, you had that attitude, man, in those days. I had that attitude, just like I'm sure you guys do, is that it was never going to happen to me, right? So, but it happened to a lot of good guys that knew what they were doing, but can't judge that water. That water's pretty quick.
No, it's fierce too. When it wants to get in there, it'll get in there. Hydraulic force is an unbelievable thing, especially with hatches and canopies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we learned a lot, we did some crazy things, man. We didn't even have, just the thought of how to get out of the boat. And I know that you're an innovator as well as how to get out of the boat, man. I developed the dunk test and built it at my facility in Michigan and brought it to every race. They brought it to every race with Doc Houghton to try to teach the racers how to get out of the boat. That was a big deal. Tom Gentry couldn't get out of the boat. He went to the bow of the boat. Mark, he died because he had the canopy, but he didn't have the 5-point harness, So we learned a lot. You had to use them in unison and how to get out of the boat. Just that now you have you just open the hatch where your feet are.
Yeah.
It sounds simple now, but when you tumble at those speeds, as you know, you get a little disoriented. And
I remember Johnny being really disoriented when we crashed in Orange Beach, and he was actually trying to open the top hatch, which was the bottom hatch at the time, and I'm like, hit him, and I'm like, hey, this one. He's like, oh man, I can't believe I was that shook up. But at the time, you're panic mode.
Yeah, man, it's not good watching that water rush in.
No, it's a weird feeling.
So basically, all the stuff that happened during your day, Bob, has innovated all the safety precautions that are in place today.
Yeah, I think I was the first one in a canopy. I was the first one in a canopy, which was a little bit weird. I look at the videos in my head still. There was I was looking at this canopy. Me and Curtis we're going to redo the Systems boat. I'm looking at these pictures. My head's sticking up about this far above the canopy. Like,
what was I thinking? Okay. Well, another one, Mark Lavin, that you mentioned, a lot of his thought and Rich Lures, he always mentions the Lavin Industries, that all the safety protocol that they brought in after his accident, because the Jesse James boat, they thought it was the safest boat of all boats at the time when he actually passed away.
Yeah, he did. But it was bad. I mean, he had the 5-point harness without canopies is what happened to him. And that when he got killed, because I think when he stuffed, his head went like this, and then he kept him here, but the wall of water hit him in the top of the head and broke his neck.
Wow.
So
anyway. So I'll be racing with a Hans device for the first time this year. So
what is that?
This is when you have it's a carbon fiber bracket that basically hooks to your helmet, and then your seat belts strap it to keep your neck from stretching in case of an accident. So
that like the NASCAR.
Very similar. And
Mark,
they make us wear
that in all 3 boats?
I don't know. I know the only one that I'm made do it in is the Class 1 boat.
Sure.
But we'll see how it goes. I mean, me being a dad and all that, I want to be as safe as I can, but I also don't want to be restricted enough to where it affects me getting out or affects how I perform that much. So
Yeah. This episode of Boats and Bros has been brought to you by Performance Boat Center, where Myrick Coil is the shop foreman. Myrick, what's happening over there at Performance?
oh, more than you can imagine. So paint shop, we're painting some new performance power boats that have showed up. Rigging, we're doing some stereo installs and upgrades to some center consoles, and then the rigging of the next performance powerboat, the 36, that's going to be Rambo's, and so we got that going on. As you move over to the service department, Chance is in the drive room building drives. Justice is on the phone, just doing what Justice does. So we got that going on. Basically, we just hit a weekend where it's warming up. So from whatever didn't get done, whether it's maintenance or whether it's a re-rig of a boat or whatever, it's a very busy place. So since all that's going on, of course, sales is a huge part of our business. So whatever they need done, whether it's a delivery, an inspection, a mechanical inspection, whether it usually is like, compression checks, leak down tests, drive services, stuff to make sure that a person isn't buying a boat that isn't up to his standards. So, yeah, that's what's going on over there. It's starting to get busier on the weekends. We've had a couple of 70-degree days here, and it starts to get people antsy. I always say it's solar powered, and you can definitely tell Lake of the Ozarks solar powered. So
That's a great way to put it. So Performance Boat Center with 2 locations to serve you: Osage Beach, Missouri, and South Florida. So yeah. Well, Bob, back in your day, all the race, I mean, it was such an event to go to an offshore powerboat race. And, it drew out Hollywood to come out and join you, right? You had Chuck Norris and Kurt Russell and Don Johnson, all joining the offshore powerboat fleet and essentially becoming your competitors. And you and Don Johnson had an interesting relationship.
Yeah, we did.
You tell us
Are you
about
referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So Don was my friend. We were buddies, and spent a little time together, and just through racing. And so one time he asked me. I was in Long Beach, Long Beach, and he was, of course, it was a thing we called PORT. They started OPT, and then they started PORT, Professional Offshore Racing Teams, or just to try to promote the sport. They're always trying to continually to promote the sport. So they got stars out there, and which was pretty cool because it brought some attention to the sport. And then Don decided to go racing himself, which was cool. And he hooked up with a great boat, and I believe he had Rich Lures. No, not Rich Lures. Richie Powers, I think, was his throttle one. Yeah, Richie Powers. So they were a good team and great team. But then he asked me one time, he said, would you be interested to go into on Good Morning America, Good Morning LA, I think it was called. And I was like, there's 2.5 million people watch this. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go with you. He says, we're going to leave out of the helicopter, out of the pits. And you can, so I brought my fiance, I believe at the time, and we went to, and we got on with him and Melanie Griffith, and we flew in the helicopter to NBC studios. So I said, man, this is pretty cool,
Yeah.
Offshore racer guy going on this thing, got my cowboy boots on and jeans. I'm like, all right, I'll go on. I'm waiting in there. I see Suzanne Suthers or Summers.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, I like this show. This is all right. They said, you want any makeup? I'm like, no, I don't need makeup, man. I got to go back to the pits. This is going to be hard enough for me to do that. And then, so I go in there, and they introduce them, and we sit down. It's like a Kelly and Company kind of deal where they have like, the host sits down with Don and asks him about his a career, what he's doing. And then they ask about offshore racing and what's offshore racing all about. And he introduces the event, and we're having it this weekend. It's going to be great. I want you to come out and see it, and how long you've been racing. I'm doing really good. I'm really into this. And he talked about the sport. And then they said, and this is Bob Kaiser. He's the national and world champion. And I went out there, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And talked a little bit about what I did and, how about racing. And they said, so, Bob, you have a chance in front of 2.5 million people this morning to tell us what you think about Don Johnson's driving ability. And I said, I really don't know. And they said, well, why don't you know? And I said, because he's always behind me. And, which is a typical racing joke, right? But, and then, but he wasn't very happy about it. I thought it was funny. The crowd thought it was funny. He thought it was funny. The guy thought it was funny. Don Johnson didn't think it was funny. So much that when we go up the stage, he says, take a cab. I'm not taking you home in a helicopter.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, really? I didn't really say that. I'm like, really?
But that's what you're thinking. Yeah.
Because I'm like, so then I get in the cab, and it took me like 2.5 hours to get back to the pits. And I was like hot, and they had things to do. I wasn't very happy. It was the day before the race. We had things to do. And then, man, that was probably the last time I talked to Don Johnson.
Yeah. He wasn't very thick-skinned. He couldn't take it that well.
Yeah, it's just a joke.
Yeah. That's
well,
funny.
2 million people enjoyed it, so
it's too bad though. He's a pretty good guy, really.
And there's one more story with Woody Harrelson.
Man, you remember them all, huh? Right?
Yeah, I didn't even know what I didn't know Woody. Was it to do with boats? The Woody Harrelson story?
Yeah. So Woody before he was famous, I think he was just the bartender on Cheers.
Cheers,
right?
Yeah. Cheers.
I didn't know that much about it. So we were in Hilton Head, and we were put on some celebrity racers, 4 or 5 boats: Jesse James, Popeye, me, Special Edition, I think, and Popeyes, and some other guys. And we were just going to do a head-to-head race, and we put some stars in the boats. They had a boxer, they had some tennis players, and they had Woody Harrelson and some other actors and actresses. They put them in the boat. They would draw the names up on stage. It was on ESPN, so you they had the boat's names in a basket, and the star would go up there and pick his, what boat he was in. Then you kind of simulate a race, and they've been a big tennis match and all this other stuff. So, Era was over there wrenching on the boat like usual, and he has to go up on stage with me because when they announce the boat and the name, you got to go up there, and then the star goes up, blah, blah, blah. So this guy's in front of me, and I keep yelling at Errol across the pits, and he doesn't hear me, of course, or doesn't want to hear me because he really didn't want anything to do with that stuff. And so I pulled out $20, and I told this guy in front of me, I tapped my shoulder, I said, listen, bro, can you go, here's $20. Can you go get that guy and tell him to get his ass over here because we got to do we got to get up on stage. He says, I can't. I got to go up on stage too. I said, who are you? He says, I'm Woody Harrelson. I said, give me back my $20.
So what? He was a white man can jump. So white men can drive boats also, I guess. Yeah. That's
so funny. That was funny.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of good times, winning was great. Everybody remembers the wins. Winning was all about, like I said, we never thought it would happen to us. And then it didn't, thank God, paying the price like this young man will with his back when he gets older. But
yeah, I'm sitting here hunched over right now.
It's like this, just it's always going like that.
Yeah.
But, the old races, Errol Lanier was the greatest, man. Errol, I would have done things a lot different. We did a lot of innovating. People said I helped the sport by innovating. I'm glad I could be a part of the safety, like for many reasons, obviously to save people's lives. But, if I would have done it over, I probably wouldn't have gone as crazy on the Gentry Turbo 352 cubic inch twin turbocharged motors, putting out 1,000 a piece that were too heavy of a boat to work, and all this, the millions of dollars we spent with McLaren engines and Chevrolet racing team. I'd probably been better off in those days just getting a skater and putting the Mercury package in and going racing. So
yeah,
I do regret that. I had a few tough years thereafter, and I was just trying to go so much faster than everybody else instead of just going out and compete.
Yeah, I've been on those teams. I've been in the old Dave Scott team where we're unlimited and have to have all this power, and then I've been in the boats that are on the teams where we're limited in horsepower, but we're probably going to finish the race. And when you can refine the boat and work just to be more competitive, it's a little different feeling. It's cool that you say that, because that's the way I feel about it too.
Yeah, it's nothing worse than not finishing a race.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, then because the worst thing is you just go home. It's like you got to wrench for, whatever, popping new ones in.
We actually were out testing the Supercat today, and we blew up an engine, and we have a marathon race in 2 weeks. And it's like, the whole thing is like, well, at least it happened now,
Right.
And we're not down there. We travel 2,000 miles to go down there and blow something up and it would have been lap 2 or 3. So anyway.
So how many years was your racing career, Bob?
80, well, on the national circuit from 84 through 97. So what is that, 14 years, 15 years, right?
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, a lot of races. So I probably raced, I was trying to think of that. I mean, in those days we used 10 races plus 3 at the World. So 13 times 14, I don't know, 170, 180 races. Nothing like Johnny Tomlinson, or Steven, but did good.
I know. I remember the first time I raced Steve Curtis was in St. Clair, Michigan. It's actually when him and Tom Abrams rolled the boat, and Johnny and I were right behind him. And right before that, I had asked Johnny, I go, so in your opinion, who's the best out here? And he goes, Steve Curtis. And like 5 minutes later, he's upside down in that south turn down by the park. And I'm like,
I was there. I was watching you guys.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, man, you jinxed him by calling him the best.
It's tough, man.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Steve Curtis is still to this day one of your close friends, and you've had a lot of friends that you've met through boat racing.
Absolutely.
Some of the best, like Al Copeland was one of your good friends.
Yeah. Al Copeland, great friend. Jeffrey Sofer is my best friend and business partner, a partner of Johnny Tomlinson also.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, a lot of influence. A lot of guys have influenced me the right way and taught me a lot, right? So good guys. Like the cast of characters, they're all type A individuals, that's for sure.
No
to get in the boat like that. I mean, everybody wants to get in the boat, but if you really go racing, you know that you have a special bond like I have with him. So it's like, because no one really knows what it's like until you do it.
I've said to so many people, I wish I could just take you for one lap at Cocoa Beach and see what your mindset is after, because even mine gets to the fact, like, what are we doing out here? And I'm crazy when it comes to that kind of stuff, but that's cool.
It's good to have good friends. I mean, that's the lifelong friends, right? I still talk to them a lot. I mean, I talk to Jeffrey every day, but all of them. Yeah, even the guys your rivals. There's a couple of guys I still don't like because they were competitors, but they were nice competitors.
Yeah.
So, of all the races that you've competed in, do you have one race or one moment that stands out above the rest? I
mean, as far as winning, the World Championship or the last race to win winning the national championship in my hometown of Bay City, Michigan. Bay City? Port Huron, I think. Port Huron. Yeah, Port Huron. I won the national championship in Michigan, and then winning the World Championships in Key West was great.
Yeah.
And those were great memories. And the worst memories are the ones you lose by inches.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that are hard to forget.
Right.
But you always because you always think you should win every race. I mean, if you don't think you're going to win every race, you shouldn't be out
don't
there,
be
right?
out there. Exactly.
I mean, I always thought I was going to win every race.
Yeah, right.
180 races. Obviously, I didn't win every race, but unfortunately, we were in first place an awful lot when we broke. That's what. It wasn't like we were just trying to hang on.
Yeah.
So you always question yourself, and you always second guess yourself whether you obviously shouldn't have charged so hard, but. Yeah. That's the kind of team we were, right? I had a great career, and I got to race with a lot of guys at the end. I got to race. I raced with Jeffrey when we raced the Budweiser boat. We took second at the Worlds. I raced with Joey and Prussia in Key West, and the first time a 46. There was a 46 skater, the recovery boat. Stewart couldn't make it, so won the first national race a 46 skater ever won with Joey and Prussia. I raced with Stephen Curtis many times in Key West in a Cougar and a Couve, and I raced with J.D. D'Elia. What a great throttle man. So, I mean, there was some great. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, when you think about it, when you're doing it, but I mean, they say those names now. They're pretty legendary names,
Yeah,
sure.
That's exactly the way I feel too. We have a lot in common like that. I'm lucky to be the guy in there with good guys, so it matters a lot. So
yeah, you're not much of a driver if you don't have a good throttle man.
Yeah, you're done.
Speaking of that, Bob,
it's easy to go slow.
Yeah.
So with such a successful career, you ultimately retired. Was there a reason why you had to step away from racing?
Yeah, I don't think I had to step away from racing. I mean, I loved it, right? I was in my blood. I mean, I went racing because I lived to race, right? I worked, but I worked to make enough money to go racing and try to, in the end, we had a lot of sponsorships, which was great, but it obviously never paid for the whole deal. But I think, having children, having my daughter for sure that's the story, right? I was at the World Championships. I was racing with Steven, and I loved rough water because that's where I would excel, because we'd set the boat up for rough, and I basically could hang on better than most people in the boat with Earl, or Steven. And so I had my little daughter, and she was fussing before the second race of the Worlds, and I was racing for Budweiser, and it was pretty cool. I had the Budweiser uniform on, and I had my daughter in the Budweiser hat, and she was just a little baby, and I'm like, this is probably the coolest thing in the world, right? And then she loved me up, and I loved her up. And then, when you used to go out of the cut at Key West, you would go out, and then as you got out to the West Sand Key, the rollers would start to come, and it would get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you'd launch, and then you were out for the real race. So I never had felt this before, and that day after leaving my daughter, who was just recently born or whatever, I hit that first wave, and I said, God, I hope I don't die today. And I never thought that before I swear to God, I never thought that. I never couldn't think that way, right? But I did think it. And then I was kind of like, I lost my edge a little bit, and I said, when I get done with this 3-race deal, I'm done. And that's when I quit. So that was the last race of the World Championships in 1997.
Wow.
It's a good reason. It's a good reason to stop. That's for sure.
I'll blame it on her. I blame everything. I was at the hockey game with her last night, and she's 27, right?
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. And I'm glad nothing happened to me, because it sure is fun watching the kids grow up. My son, after hockey, I watched my son progress as an elite athlete in 2 sports, baseball and hockey, and he chose hockey and became a great hockey player and played USHL and got a full ride to play at UMass and won a national championship. And his career was cut short out of the NHL by blowing both his shoulders out and having multiple operations and 4 screws and lots of artificial bones and joints. And so he's done, but watching him was as thrilling as winning a world championship. That's for sure.
I bet.
That's awesome. But the performance boating bug never left you, because you've got quite the fleet of pleasure boats now.
Yeah, I've seen a picture of your boat house. Your boat house is pretty epic. That's for sure.
Amazing.
I like it. It's fun. Yeah. We got back to. I mean, listen. I was taught by the best, right? I had Al Copeland. You had George Morales. You always brought the circus to town.
A bunch of carnies.
Yeah, man. We had a pretty good circus too. So the Systems team always had the Porsche underneath the trailer, or the Corvette, depending on where our sponsorship was from, or the motorcycles on the side, and the work, all the fun stuff. So it was great. But now, man, after Bobby was done hockey, I figured, what the hell, I might as well show the kid what race boats are all about. So I went over like that we were talking earlier. I went over to see Randy over at Lake X and had the intentions of buying a 42, right? A 42. They
Yeah,
make a
yeah.
42. Yeah, 42 inboard. But I ended up with a 48 that I bought for 1 year, and then I built a new 48, and I built a new 44 outboard now that's built. I'm just waiting for the new power that's supposedly coming out, put on the back, and then I have the 50-foot MTI with the 5 450s.
Yeah, that's my dream boat right there. Packing all them people on that big 50B like that, man. That doesn't get any better than that for me.
Yeah, so we have fun out there. It's fun. I mean, you kidding me? I mean, I can drive that 48-foot MTI like 140 miles an hour with one hand, or you can let the steering go without you really want to at 130 and go.
Yeah.
My boat at 115 miles an hour, like white knuckling, like
hold on for dear life. That's great.
A whole different deal. So they've got the new boats really dialed in, but Randy does a great job on his boats, I think, and
he does.
He's a meticulous man, and his his workmanship is impeccable, I believe. At least my boats are, and
he does a great job.
But the boats are so fast right now, man. I mean, this boat goes 165, 170 miles an hour. It's only got the 1100 1350s, and that's fast, as you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the race boats are going 150, but they're doing different. Listen, they're turning a lot harder, and they're a lot more complex than the pleasure boats. But to go that fast is pretty incredible.
It is.
Well, it was awesome because, Bob, you were good enough to have Speedboat magazine out to your place. My photographer Tom Lee was with me. My videographer Carter Body was there, and then the entire Sism family: Taylor, Randy, and Sherelle, and Steve Curtis. So it was quite the production. We ran 3 of your boats and shot them, and then went back to your house, and trouble ensued from there. I wish we could share some of those stories, but that was one heck of a time. And this cover here is one of the products of it, and so thanks again for having us out. That was so much fun.
That was a good day. We had a good time. I kind of screwed up the photo shoot on the helicopter, but we got more time.
No, it was great. But to that, coming up in, I think, June or July, you'll be running the boat again with Steve Curtis, right? The 48 at the Point Thunder book run.
We're going to go for the 3rd annual Steve Curtis Bob Kaiser show at Point. We have a little fun. I never thought I'd do a poker run because, whatever.
Right.
But now they're a little bit different. So we have fun up there. We go support the charity up there. So it's my hometown. What the heck? We have a good time.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Sure.
I hear everybody talk about how beautiful the water is, and I think there's like an old quarry or something with a bunch of beautiful houses around there.
Yeah.
Neat stuff.
Bay Harbor.
Yeah, that's
really
cool.
Pretty, really pretty. Yeah, Ray was there last year. That one boat started on fire. Remember, Ray? That one.
Oh yeah,
that was a bad deal.
That was rough.
Yeah, so Stephen and I stay together that way. Stephen and I are working on a project right now. I didn't know if you know or not, Ray. We found the Systems boat.
Yeah, you told me.
Yeah, we found it.
And you guys are restoring that.
Yeah, we're restoring it.
That's awesome.
What does Systems stand for? Is that your business or?
Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't know what to name the boat, what to name the racing team, because I had no sponsors when I first started. So we make paint. We have been making paint finishing systems. So I figured systems that you could be anyone, the Gentry systems, the Budweiser systems, whatever. So
I noticed it had Sickens on there real big at one time too. Yeah. So obviously that makes sense now.
0, but they had a big sign. In those days, you didn't get much,
Yeah, the more stickers, the cooler it looks.
We had some good sponsors. It's pretty funny because when the boat started off in '86, we didn't have any one Mercury sticker, that we had to pay for, And then by '87 we had a lot of sponsorships, but it was great. But yeah, we were doing that. I couldn't find the actual boat, my 38 Cougar, and I found it. We knew where it was because it was showing up on Offshore Only or whatever. It was in some junkyard in Oakland, California, but I couldn't get in there. I sent private eyes out there, private detectives. They couldn't. Everybody trying to get this boat out. They couldn't get the owner to give me the guy's name who had the boat, and it was really weird. So I ended up saying the hell with it. And so I bought John Antonelli's old boat, which was Spirit of America, which I didn't want to because that was it was my competition, but it was the exact boat. And So I was going to paint that up like my Systems boat. But I always had like, it's Curtis and I were going to do that. And out of the blue, Errol got a call from the guy that had the boat and said, "You want to buy the boat?" I said, "Yeah." So sent a guy out there and picked the boat up. So now we got both of them. So now I got the Systems boat and the Spirit of the American boat. Oh, the hell. Yeah. So
nostalgia race.
So yeah, we're gonna do it. So Steve and I, we bought the motors the other day, motors and drives, and then Steven's gonna reskin the whole boat, and we're gonna paint it up like the old boat and put the old seats in, and
that's cool. To make it. I thought it was really neat in St. Clair when they had that nostalgia race before the other race. I think it was maybe this year or last year. Yeah. They kind of all blend together. But yeah, he was in an old Cougar. I think trying to think of that. Dave Wesseldike has the
endangered species.
Yeah, that's cool.
Endangered species, I think.
Yeah.
So that's what I don't know if we're going to do that, but it's kind of fun.
So Bob, what is the plan after the boats are done?
I have no idea.
Other than we're going to cover it.
Yeah, I have no idea. I really don't know. Maybe we'll take it to one of those poker runs or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll put it on display in the street party.
Maybe listen, Steve Curtis wants to get in that thing with somebody else.
Yeah.
You guys you can go with him. You go with Steven.
I'm in. I'd love to go in the Systems.
Like, what the hell is wrong with this boat? It's too hot.
Well, we'll be constantly talking about all the changes we want to make.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. So what else, other than the Boyne Thunder Run, what else do you have on tap for 2023?
That's about it as far as having fun with boats. I mean, I got waiting for that 40. I got that 44 built, and I don't know when the power's coming in. So that should be fun. I think the 44 would be nice. I think I could use some extra power on it because I didn't want to just replace it with 450s like the 39 had. Yeah. Now I got the 44. So I was like, what am I buying a bigger boat to put the same motors on? So kind of waiting. So I'm kind of dependent whether that a boat will be there, depending on when those motors come. But I don't think I'm really doing anything other than just having fun on the lake,
Yeah.
I have a large boat now, so I'll be in the Med and hanging out in the the Med for July and August.
Awesome.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it's nothing like boat racing. That's a whole different group of people. Now there's a whole different group of people also.
Yeah. So looking back on your career, Bob, what is the thing you most cherish about your racing days?
All the people I met.
Yeah.
I miss a lot of the guys. I mean, listen, you got so many characters. Bernie Little, Tom Gentry, Al Copen, all the guys that I shouldn't probably mention, but I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, the cast of characters, and but I miss all those guys. It was like you see the same guys April through November every 2 weeks. You get pretty close, and you have a common bond. And then you get on the race course on a Saturday or Sunday. Everybody's against one another, but everybody respects each other. I mean,
you're in the pits 8 hours a day and you race 1 hour a day. So, I mean, you have all that camaraderie. It makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I miss competition, right? I'm older now, so obviously it's great to win. It's great to feel the victory of winning or the feeling of victory.
Yeah.
It humbles you a lot, right? It humbles when you think you can win everything and you don't. So it makes you a better man, I think.
Bob, do you ever get the itch to maybe jump into a boat again with like on the course and run a race with Steve Curtis or one of your other friends?
Yeah, but I don't think that's a real smart thing to do at 66 years old. I was reading that thing on Gentry today. He died, I believe, when he was 63 or 67. I'm not sure which. But, listen, my reactions aren't there. It's just the way it is. I can't race against him. He'd beat me.
Yeah.
He'd beat me or scare me.
Yeah, it depends on who my throttle man is.
But no, I mean, I don't have the reactions. I don't think that'd be fair to the other racers and or the guy in the boat with me.
Yeah. Well,
maybe they should have an over 60. Maybe they should have like a veteran. Guys.
Right.
Dial the boats down to about 100 miles an hour.
Well, one of the things that was so impressive to me is even after your your racing career, you had retired, but your passion has not diminished one bit.
It's fun, man. You get you Jones for speed, right? I always wanted to go faster and faster, and I wanted to go in rougher water. Now I just want to go faster. That's why I don't want to put the 1350, 1550 package in that boat, because I
Yeah.
know I'm just going to like, oh, don't use that key. I know that key
Oh,
being
yeah.
all day long.
Yeah, we've talked about that a couple times. As soon as you feel it, you just want to throw the 1350 key away.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, well, it's special gas. Perfect. Bring another tanker. Let's go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I know
And,
myself way too well.
yeah. And the family's good?
Family's good, man.
Bobby's
Kids
doing
are good. Bobby's good. Julia's good. My girl's good. Tanya. So
Awesome.
everything's great, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting this boat back together with Steve, and that should be fun.
Well, we're looking forward to following it and documenting it, and hopefully eventually making a story out of it, because that's such a cool feature, and especially a little cherry on top of your career.
Yeah. That's way harder to do. That's way harder to do than build a new one. That's for sure.
Yeah. I just don't know which paint job to put on it, So I got so many different names on the boat and so many different sponsors from the different years. But,
Which
it was
way are you leaning toward right now?
I don't know. Maybe Chevrolet Marine Power. That's what she was when I was the US-1, And
I think your driving suits are cool when they said the Chevy on them and stuff like that. It really gives me more of the racer feel when it had the Chevy stuff on your suits and stuff. That's cool.
That was a crazy story, right? Because Mercury they made him stop doing that, because I had Chevrolet Marine Power, and we did this whole deal with McLaren on the following boat with McLaren engines, because they were with GM, and so I called it Chevrolet, and they had a little Marine Power division, and then that bow tie on the bow. But Mercury got all mad because the Chevrolet was supplying Mercury all the blocks, and they were building the motors. But I was winning, and Chevrolet was getting the attention, and Mercury wanted the attention. So it was kind of a lot of politics. That's like the sport. It's too bad there's so much politics in all sports. Like, we always try to make the sport bigger and better, and to give it, as a driver and an owner and or a throttle man, you want to go racing. At the same time, you got to try to make the sport more professional. And we tried so many with the professional offshore racing teams, the OPT, the APBA, and now I know you could name 7 more different, and then you have different bodies come into that makes you promises that it's going to be better, and you're going to get more sponsorship, you're going to get more TV time, and then you go a different direction. And then sometimes the racers split, and the sport's not big enough to split. And
one of the reasons for this podcast, we figure we just promote ourselves and get as much information out there about the people that do it instead of just the boat, because there's so many stories behind every team, every person that's out there that a lot of people haven't heard. So that's the whole reason we're here.
Yeah, man. Is Stephen Curtis going to do it? You should get Earl Lanier on here.
Yeah. Love to have both of you guys on at the same time. That'd be fun to have.
Perfect.
You guys
he might not remember things. He didn't listen to me. He would just talk over me. If we're on this podcast, he wouldn't listen to me either. He'd just go like that to me all the time. Like, hey, Earl, there's a
straight. Go straight.
There's a fence.
Yeah, watch out for the fence.
Thank God he's all right. He had a little issue a couple of weeks ago, but he's good.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah, he was great. Listen, the best throttle man I ever raced with was definitely Earl Lanier. And he's my brother, and him and I have done everything in the world together any two guys could do in a boat. So I love that man, and I credit him for my success, because without him, I wouldn't be anything.
Well, I think definitely we need to get the both of you into that boat when it's done, and then do a photo shoot with that. That's absolutely how it needs to go.
Yeah, man, for sure. I mean, I'd still probably start sweating that old guy in that boat. He'd probably still try to hurt me.
What have I gotten myself into?
Yeah. Well, Bob, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, we could go for hours and hours, so we need to have you back, man, because I know there's a lot more stories that we haven't covered, and a lot of stuff that the fans would love to hear about. But you're a legend, and thanks so much for your time.
Yes, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming on.
Good luck this year. Good luck this year.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
So anyway, this is Ray Lee with Speedboat Magazine, with the Boats and Boat Bros podcast, with your host, Myrick Coil, and the legendary Bob Kaiser. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you.
This podcast is powered by Speedboat Magazine. Subscribe now at speedboat.com for 9 power-packed current issues a year direct to your mailbox.